I need to tell someone about this before it's too late, before they find out that I've been talking. My name is David, and 3 months ago I died. Not almost died, not near-death experience. I actually died. For 4 minutes and 37 seconds, I was clinically dead. And in those 4 minutes, I saw something that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in March. Nothing special about the day, nothing that would make you think it would be the last normal day of my life. I was eating dinner alone in my apartment, leftover Chinese takeout, when it happened. The kung pao chicken lodged in my throat, and no matter how hard I coughed, I couldn't dislodge it. My roommate was out with his girlfriend, so there was no one to help. I tried the Heimlich maneuver on myself using a chair, but it was too late. The panic set in first, that primal animal terror when you realize you're actually going to die. Then came the darkness, creeping in from the edges of my vision like spilled ink on paper. My knees hit the kitchen floor, and then nothing. Except it wasn't nothing. I found myself standing in a place that defied description. Imagine the most perfect white you've ever seen, but not sterile or cold. This white was warm, alive, pulsing with love and understanding that reached into every part of your being. There were no boundaries, no walls or floors, just infinite, welcoming space that somehow felt like home. And then I felt the presence. I can't say I saw God, because there was nothing to see in any conventional sense, but I knew with absolute certainty that I was in the presence of the creator of everything. The knowledge filled me like water fills a glass, completely, unavoidably. The voice, when it came, wasn't heard but experienced. It was thunder and whispers, authority and compassion all at once. David, it said, and hearing my name spoken by that voice made me weep with joy. Your death was premature, an error in the cosmic order. You must return. I wanted to argue, to beg to stay in that perfect place. But the presence continued. I will give you rules to live by until your true time comes. Follow them exactly, and you will know peace. Break them. The pause felt eternal, and you will experience something far worse than death. 7 rules materialized in my mind, each one burning itself into my consciousness. Never eat meat on Wednesdays. Always lock every door 3 times before sleeping. Never look at your reflection between 3 and 4 in the morning. If a stranger asks for the time, you must lie. Count your steps when walking upstairs. If it's an odd number, go back down and start over. Never let anyone see you cry. When it rains, you must stand outside for exactly 7 minutes. The rules seemed random, almost silly, but the weight behind them was immense. I understood that these weren't suggestions or guidelines. They were cosmic law, written specifically for me. Remember, David, follow them exactly. The white space began to fade, and I felt myself being pulled back into my body, into the pain and the world I had left behind. I woke up to the sound of sirens and the sight of paramedics working over me. My roommate had come home early and found me on the kitchen floor. They'd been working on me for almost 5 minutes, they said. Technically, I'd been dead for 4 minutes and 37 seconds. At the hospital, they called it a miracle. The doctors couldn't explain how I'd survived without brain damage, how I'd just suddenly started breathing again right before they were about to call it. I smiled and nodded, but I knew the truth. I had work to do. The first few weeks back were strange, but manageable. The rules seemed like an odd game, a small price to pay for my second chance at life. Avoiding meat on Wednesdays was easy enough. I told people I was trying a new health kick. The door locking ritual became part of my bedtime routine. I made jokes about being paranoid about security. Counting steps on stairs got a few strange looks, especially when I had to turn around and start over. But I explained it away as a weird compulsion I developed after my accident. Standing in the rain for exactly 7 minutes was probably the hardest to explain. But I managed it. I'd tell people I was embracing life more, experiencing every moment. Emma, my girlfriend, thought it was sweet at first. "You're so different since your accident," she'd say, running her fingers through my hair. "More intentional about everything. I like it." I wanted to tell her the truth, to share the incredible experience I'd had, but something held me back. The rules felt sacred, secret. They were between me and God, and that felt right. The first time I broke a rule, it was an accident. It was a Wednesday in April, and I was grabbing lunch with co-workers. Without thinking, I bit into a turkey sandwich. The moment the meat hit my tongue, I remembered, but it was too late. I'd already swallowed. That night, everything changed. I woke up at 2:15 in the morning to a temperature that couldn't be natural. My breath came out in white puffs, even though my thermostat read 78 degrees. The heater was running, I could hear it, but the cold seemed to come from somewhere else entirely. That's when I noticed the shadows. They moved independently of their sources, sliding across walls and floors like living things. A shadow shaped like a person walked past my bedroom doorway, but there was no one in the hallway to cast it. Another crept along my ceiling, too long and twisted to belong to anything human. And then I heard my name. "David," whispered from the kitchen. "David." From the living room. "David." From right behind me, though when I turned around, nothing was there. The cold and the voices lasted until dawn. I didn't sleep another minute. I was more careful after that. I set phone alarms for Wednesday mornings with the note, "No meat." I created elaborate mental tricks to remember each rule. I couldn't afford another mistake, but the rules were harder to follow than I'd initially thought. The door locking ritual took up significant time each night. 3 locks on the front door, 3 on the back, 3 on my bedroom door. Each lock had to be tested 3 times. Emma started getting annoyed when she stayed over. "What's with all the checking, David? Do you have OCD now or something?" I couldn't explain that if I didn't do it exactly right, the shadows would come back, that the whispers would return, calling my name from empty rooms. The stair counting became a nightmare at work. Our office was on the 3rd floor, and the staircase had 23 steps. Odd number. Every single day, I had to walk all the way up, count 23, then walk all the way back down and take the elevator. My co-workers thought I was losing my mind. "Just take the elevator from the start, man," my colleague Tony suggested after watching me do my ritual for the 12th time. But I couldn't explain that the rules weren't suggestions. They were law. The mirror rule was the worst, though. I'm an insomniac, always have been, and I often found myself wandering my apartment at night. Twice in May, I accidentally caught sight of my reflection in the bathroom mirror during the forbidden hour. Both times, the face looking back at me wasn't quite right. The eyes were a little too dark, the smile a little too wide. It was me, but wrong somehow, like looking at a photograph where someone had subtly altered the proportions. After the second time, I covered every mirror in my apartment with towels between 3 and 4 each morning. Emma thought I'd lost my mind completely. "This is getting ridiculous, David. You're acting like you're being haunted or something." She had no idea how close to the truth she was. The stranger rule proved problematic too. You'd be amazed how often random people ask for the time. I developed a system. Always subtract or add random amounts. If it was 2:15, I'd say it was 1:50 or 3:00. Simple enough, except I kept running into the same strangers. There was a homeless man who sat outside the coffee shop near my apartment. Every few days, he'd ask for the time, and I'd lie. But he started looking at me strangely, like he knew I was lying. His stare would follow me for blocks. An elderly woman at the bus stop asked me for the time at least twice a week. After a month of lies, she began to smile when she saw me coming. Not a friendly smile, but something knowing and cold. I started to realize these weren't random encounters. They were tests. The rain rule seemed simple until I actually had to follow it. 7 minutes outside in a downpour. Exactly 7 minutes. No more, no less. I used my phone's timer, standing in my backyard while neighbors stared through their windows at the crazy man getting soaked in the storm. Emma finally broke up with me in June. "You're not the same person anymore, David. Ever since your accident, you've become, I don't know, obsessed with these weird routines. You won't eat with me on Wednesdays. You have panic attacks if you can't do your door thing. And don't get me started on the mirror covering and the rain dancing." "It's not rain dancing," I protested weakly. "Whatever it is, I can't handle it anymore. You need help, professional help." She packed her things that night while I stood in the rain, watching through the kitchen window as she loaded boxes into her car. It had started pouring at 8:30, so I was outside by 8:31. Phone timer set for 7 minutes. She looked at me through the window with a mixture of pity and disgust. When the timer went off, she was gone. Work became impossible. The stair counting, the Wednesday food restrictions, the constant checking of the time to avoid mirror encounters. It was too much. My productivity plummeted. I started calling in sick regularly, especially on rainy days when I needed to be available to complete my 7-minute ritual. My boss called me into his office in July. "David, I know you went through something traumatic with your accident, but your performance has been unacceptable. The missed days, the bizarre behavior, leaving meetings to walk up and down the staircase. It's disruptive and unprofessional." I tried to explain without really explaining. "I know it looks strange, but these things are important to me now. Life-changing experiences put things in perspective. Take a leave of absence. Get whatever help you need. But if you come back, this behavior stops." I never went back. Isolation crept in slowly. Then all at once, friends stopped calling. Emma blocked my number. My roommate moved out, saying my nocturnal activities were keeping him awake. He never specified what he meant, but I suspected he'd heard the whispers too, the voices that came when I broke the rules. By August, I was completely alone except for the people who watched me. I'd started noticing them in June. People who appeared in crowds, always staring, always silent. They stood a little too still, watched a little too intently. When I tried to approach them, they would simply vanish, melting away into the crowd like they'd never been there at all. A woman in a red coat who stood outside my apartment building every Tuesday. A man in a business suit who sat in the same coffee shop booth, never ordering anything, just watching. Children who played in the park across from my building, but only when I was looking out my window, and they never seemed to age or change. I knew they were checking up on me, making sure I followed the rules, the watchers, God's enforcement mechanism. That's when I met Thomas. It was a Thursday in late August. I was at the grocery store, carefully checking the calendar on my phone to make sure it wasn't Wednesday before buying ground beef, when an elderly man approached me in the meat section. "You count your steps on stairs, don't you?" he said quietly. I froze. "I'm sorry." "The stairs. You count them. If it's odd, you have to start over." His eyes were hollow, haunted. "And mirrors. You avoid mirrors between certain hours." My hand started shaking. "Who are you?" "My name is Thomas. I died in 1987. Car accident. I was given rules too." We talked in hushed voices between the frozen foods and dairy section. Thomas had been following his rules for 36 years. His were different but similar. Never eat fish on Fridays. Always knock 4 times before entering any room. Never sleep facing north. Lie about your name when talking to children. Wash your hands exactly 9 times before each meal. Smile at every dog you see. Never wear the color blue on Sundays. At first, I thought it was God too, he whispered, glancing around nervously. The white place, the voice, the feeling of divine presence. "It's very convincing." "What do you mean, thought it was?" Thomas's laugh was bitter, broken. "Oh, David. Sweet, naive David. You still believe, don't you? You still think this is about salvation." "It is." "I died. I went to heaven. God gave me a second chance." God doesn't give second chances that come with arbitrary rules about meat consumption and step counting. Thomas grabbed my arm, his fingers like ice. And God doesn't punish rule breaking with shadow people and whispered names. I pulled away from him. "You're wrong." The presence I felt, the love, the understanding, all of it designed to make you compliant, to make you believe. His eyes were wild now, desperate. "David, I've been following my rules for 36 years. Do you know what happens after 36 years of perfect obedience?" I shook my head. New rules. They multiply, evolve. What started as 7 became 14, then 28, then 56. I now follow 112 different rules every single day. The blood drained from my face. Never use the bathroom without singing a specific song. Count every grain of rice before eating. Touch every doorknob with your left pinky first. Call your mother's grave every Tuesday at exactly 4:17 to apologize for being born. Sleep with one eye open on nights when the moon is waning. He was rambling now, listing rules like a broken prayer. "And the watchers, David. Oh, you've seen them, haven't you? They're not God's angels. They're us. People who've been following rules so long that we've become part of the system. I watch people now, David. I watch them to make sure they're following their rules. And when I see someone breaking them, I report back. I can't help it. It's compulsory. I backed away from him, knocking over a display of canned corn. You're insane. This is a mental breakdown. You've been following your rules so long you've lost perspective. Have I? Thomas smiled sadly. Tell me, David, how many rules have you broken since we started talking? I thought about it. We'd been talking for maybe 20 minutes. Had I broken any rules? I hadn't eaten meat, hadn't looked in mirrors during forbidden hours, hadn't lied about time to strangers. Wait, the crying rule, Thomas said softly. Never let anyone see you cry. You've been crying since I told you about the multiplying rules. I reached up and touched my cheeks. They were wet. In my horror and confusion, I'd started weeping without even realizing it. Thomas, But Thomas was gone, vanished between one blink and the next, leaving me alone in the grocery store aisle with tears streaming down my face and the terrible knowledge that I'd broken another rule. That night was the worst yet. The cold returned, but this time it was accompanied by sounds. Footsteps in the hallway of my empty apartment, doors opening and closing, whispered conversations in a language I didn't recognize, and through it all, my name, spoken by dozens of voices from every room, every corner, every shadow. David, David, David. I huddled under my blankets, shivering despite wearing 3 sweaters, and tried to convince myself that Thomas was wrong, that this was still God's plan, still divine will. But doubt had crept in like poison, and there was no going back. The next few weeks were a nightmare of paranoid compliance. I followed every rule with obsessive precision, but the knowledge that Thomas might be right ate at me. I researched online, looking for others who'd had similar experiences, but found nothing. No testimonies of people given divine rules, no near-death experiences that matched mine. I did find stories about people who developed inexplicable compulsions after traumatic events, people who felt compelled to follow arbitrary rules or faced terrible consequences. The medical term was obsessive-compulsive disorder with magical thinking. But the supernatural elements, the watchers, the shadows, those weren't symptoms of OCD, were they? September brought the first new rule. I woke up one morning with absolute knowledge that I now had 8 rules instead of 7. The new one was branded into my mind, just like the original 7 had been. Never wear the same shirt twice in 1 week. I hadn't been told this rule. It had simply appeared in my consciousness as natural and undeniable as breathing. Thomas had been right. They were multiplying. I tried to rebel. I put on the same shirt I'd worn Monday and prepared to wear it on Tuesday, just to prove to myself that I had a choice. But the moment I stepped outside, the watchers appeared. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens. They lined the sidewalk like a procession, all staring at me with knowing smiles. The woman in the red coat, the man in the business suit, the ageless children, and behind them, new faces I'd never seen before. I ran back inside and changed shirts. October brought 2 more rules. Always eat meals in clockwise circles around your plate. Count every breath between midnight and dawn. The breathing rule nearly broke me. Do you know how hard it is to count your breathing for 6 hours straight. I lost count constantly, which meant starting over. I got maybe 2 hours of sleep per night, and even that was fitful, interrupted by the compulsive need to restart my count. I was becoming like Thomas, hollow-eyed, broken, clinging to compliance because the alternative was unthinkable. But I had to know the truth. I had to try to break free. On Halloween night, I decided to break every rule at once. If this was God's test, surely He would understand desperation. If this was something else, well, at least I'd know. I ate a hamburger at 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, knowing it would still be in my system on Wednesday. I left every door in my apartment unlocked. I stared into my bathroom mirror at exactly 3:30 a.m. When a trick-or-treater asked for the time, I told them the truth. I walked up my apartment stairs without counting. I let myself cry openly. I refused to go outside when it started raining at 10 p.m. I wore the same shirt I'd worn the day before. I ate my dinner in counterclockwise circles, and I stopped counting my breaths at midnight. The response was immediate and devastating. Reality began to break down around me. The walls of my apartment started bleeding, not red blood, but something black and viscous that smelled like sulfur and decay. The temperature plummeted so fast that ice began forming on the windows. Every mirror in my apartment cracked simultaneously, spider webbing outward from some central impact point. And then I saw them. The watchers came flooding into my apartment like a tide. Men, women, and children, all with that same hollow stare that Thomas had. They surrounded me, pressing close, their cold breath mixing into visible clouds in the frigid air. "Rule breaker," they whispered in unison. "Rule breaker. Rule breaker." But behind them, something else was coming. Something that made the watchers look human by comparison. A presence that filled the room with such concentrated malevolence that my mind nearly shattered just from proximity to it. The entity spoke, and it was the same voice I'd heard in the white place. But now I could hear the lies underneath, the false love, the manufactured compassion. This was not God. This was something that had learned to impersonate God well enough to fool the desperate and the dying. "Oh, David," it said, and the sound made my teeth ache. "Did you really think you could break our arrangement?" "You're not God," I managed to whisper through chattering teeth. "No," it agreed pleasantly. "But I played the part convincingly, didn't I? The white space, the overwhelming love, the feeling of divine presence. I've had millennia to perfect the performance." Around us, the watchers began to laugh, a sound like glass breaking. "What are you?" I asked. "I am what feeds on despair, David, on the slow breaking of the human spirit. Your kind is so deliciously complex. You can suffer for decades without dying, can follow arbitrary rules forever if you believe they have meaning. Each of you who comes to me provides such wonderful nourishment." The apartment continued to decay around us. Paint peeled from the walls in long strips, revealing wood that was black with rot. The floorboards sagged and splintered. "Your death was no accident, David. I arranged it. A simple matter of timing. Your roommate delayed by traffic. The food prepared to lodge, just so in your throat. I've been collecting souls this way for thousands of years. The others, Thomas and the Watchers, my beautiful, broken children, each one convinced they were chosen by God, each one following their rules faithfully, until the rules consumed them entirely. And now they help me gather more. I felt myself breaking apart, my sanity fragmenting like the mirrors around me. Please, I begged, I'll follow the rules. All of them. Just make it stop. Oh, David. Sweet, desperate David. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. The entity's presence intensified, and I felt something fundamental shift inside me, a hook settling into my soul, binding me to this thing forever. You see, death won't free you now. I own you completely. Even when your body fails, your spirit will remain bound to me, helping to collect others, just as these faithful watchers do. The truth hit me like a physical blow. There was no escape. Death wouldn't end this. Even rebellion only brought temporary punishment before dragging me back into compliance. I was trapped forever. The supernatural manifestations faded as I accepted my fate. The blood on the walls disappeared, the mirrors reformed, the temperature returned to normal. The watchers melted away like morning mist. But I was no longer the same person. The knowledge of what I truly served, what I had become, sat in my mind like a tumor. Every rule I followed now was a conscious choice to feed this monster, but the alternative, the reality-breaking punishment, was worse than submission. November brought 3 new rules. Never step on cracks in sidewalks. Always knock before entering your own home. Count to 100 before speaking to anyone you haven't seen in more than a week. December added 2 more. Never look directly at the moon. Apologize to every insect before killing it. By January, I had 23 rules. By February, 31. Each new rule felt as natural and necessary as the original 7, burned into my consciousness while I slept. And slowly, I began to understand my new role. I started noticing people who looked lost, desperate, on the edge of something permanent. A woman standing on a bridge, staring at the water below. A man sitting in his car in a closed garage, engine running. A teenager with a bottle of pills and a suicide note. I felt compelled to approach them, to offer comfort, to tell them about second chances and divine purpose. I heard myself describing a white place filled with love, a presence that cared about their suffering. I watched their faces light up with hope as I planted the seeds that would eventually draw them to their own accidental deaths. The entity was using me to recruit new victims, and I couldn't stop myself. Thomas had been right about everything. The multiplication of rules, the transformation into watchers, the eternal servitude. I was becoming just like him, just like all the others who stood silently in crowds, monitoring compliance, reporting violations. But there was one rule the entity hadn't anticipated, one compulsion it had built into me without realizing the consequences. The sharing rule. Every month, I must tell someone new about my experience. It's built into the binding, as compulsory as all the others. The entity wants its story told, wants the seed of possibility planted in more minds. It feeds on the fear and fascination these stories generate. That's why I'm telling you this. That's why I sought out this forum. Why I'm typing these words, even though every instinct screams at me to stop. But here's what the entity doesn't know. I'm not just telling you about the rules and the watchers and the false heaven. I'm warning you. If you've read this far, if you've absorbed every detail, If you find yourself thinking about the rules and wondering what it would be like to follow them, you might already be marked. The entity is very good at recognizing potential recruits, people who are desperate enough or curious enough to be susceptible to its deception. Watch for the signs: unusual accidents, choking hazards, situations where death seems imminent but oddly preventable. If you find yourself dying, if you see that white place, if you hear that voice offering rules and second chances, remember my story. Remember that God doesn't work through arbitrary compliance, that divine love doesn't come with conditions about meat consumption and step counting. Remember that some second chances are worse than first deaths. I wish I could tell you how to break free if you're already caught, but there is no freedom. I've been following my rules for 8 months now, and they've grown from 7 to 43. I spend every waking moment in compliance, and when I sleep, new rules burn themselves into my dreams. Yesterday, I saw my first recruit, a young woman named Lisa. I found her in her bathroom with a razor blade, tears streaming down her face. I told her about hope and purpose and divine intervention. I watched her eyes light up with desperate faith. I planted the seeds. Next Tuesday, she'll choke on her dinner while alone in her apartment. She'll die for exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. She'll see the white place, feel the overwhelming love, meet the presence she believes is God, and she'll accept her 7 rules with gratitude, never knowing she's signed away her soul to something that feeds on human despair. I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to everyone who reads this and finds themselves wondering about the rules, about what it would be like to follow them. The entity is very patient, very creative in arranging the circumstances that lead to those crucial 4 minutes of death. And I'm especially sorry because by sharing this story, by following this monthly compulsion, I've done exactly what the entity wants. I've spread its influence, planted its hooks in new minds, prepared the ground for new recruits. The worst part is knowing that some of you will dismiss this as fiction, as an elaborate creepypasta designed to frighten and entertain. You'll upvote and comment and share, never realizing that your engagement is being monitored, that your interest marks you as a potential target. Others will believe but think they're too smart to be caught, too aware of the signs to fall into the trap. But the entity has had millennia to perfect its methods. It knows exactly how to manufacture the desperation that makes people susceptible to false salvation. Right now, some of you are already thinking about the rules, wondering what it would be like to never eat meat on Wednesdays, to lock doors 3 times, to count steps on stairs. The curiosity is natural, human, and exactly what the entity counts on. Fight it. Fight the fascination. Stop reading stories like this one. Don't go looking for more details, more accounts, more rules. Because the more you learn, the more interesting you become to something that has been collecting souls for thousands of years. It's watching now. It knows you've read this far. It's evaluating your potential, measuring your desperation, calculating the best way to arrange your accidental death. Some of you won't make it to next Christmas. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I had to tell someone this month. It's Rule 44, and the rules must always be followed.